Today we're speaking with Stuart Hart of Cornell University, a member of the Novelis Sustainability Advisory Council. Thank you so much for joining us today, Stuart.
My pleasure.
My first question, as a professor, as a leader in sustainability, what attracted you to join the Novelis Sustainability Advisory Council?
Yeah, so I'm at Cornell, and I teach in the strategy area, but I'm also have been involved for some time in the area of sustainable enterprise. So founded the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise. And for me, I guess my focus for the past decade or more has been, how do you embed these issues around social and environmental challenges? How do you embed those in the core strategy of companies? So I think of it as integrating sustainability challenges and strategy, not just having kind of something on the side that's a nice social program or a nice environmental program. So to me, one of the things that was really interesting about Novelis was its focus on doing exactly that, right? That the idea of moving very audaciously to an 80% target of recycled aluminum, becoming essentially above ground miners, right? Is an audacious thing to stake out, a position to stake out. But it's not just for the sake of having an environmental program. There's a strategic logic to it as well, that the idea of moving downstream, moving into this idea of recycled content, of creating a take-back infrastructure, that's great because it dramatically reduces energy use, it dramatically reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It also reduces cost, right? So This is not just kind of a nice thing to do. There's competitive logic to it. It also potentially creates differentiation out there in the consumer space as well. And that's a nice combination to have, right? If you can both have a lower cost position and a differentiated position, that's really important. Then I think thirdly, and perhaps most interesting for me in terms of Novelis, is this sort of preemptive approach that the company's taking. That by staking this audacious position out, because the company starts at like 25%, right, recycled content, 80% by 2020, by staking that position out and being as big as it is in the world, in essence, it's a preemptive move. If the company is successful at doing that, it almost blocks others from following, which is brilliant strategy, and I think we'll see the whole industry over the next decade be transformed in substantial ways. Novelis is sort of the leader of this disruption process. So for me, this is exciting on multiple levels, because this is exactly the kind of stuff that I've been focused on trying to figure out how to do for the past 10, 15, 20 years.
What do you think is going well within Novelis in terms of sustainability performance?
Well, so I think, again, the company, of course, is doing all the usual things that companies do in terms of eco-efficiency in current operations. All very important, I don't mean to minimize that. But to me, the single most important thing is figuring out how we transform industries, right? And the aluminum industry is a great example of one that will be transformed, right? One way or the other over the next 10 years or so, just given the size of its footprint, the amount of energy used, right? The growth rate that's occurring in the world, the greenhouse gases that are emitted in the process. One way or the other, the industry will be transformed over the next decade. And what's interesting and most important, I think, about Novelis' sustainability program is that its core strategy is geared toward doing just that. So again, the strategy itself drives toward a more sustainable world, as opposed to just reducing the negative impacts in current operations. It's really the entire life cycle of what the company is engaged in out there in the world where the big positive impact is felt.
Sure. So life cycle analysis is certainly something that we talk about as an important key to being truly sustainable. Of course, it comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of collaboration required between suppliers, customers, other stakeholders. Who do you think, as an organization or a company, that's doing that well?
Yeah, not so many, I would say. That there's this sort of life cycle logic, and you kind of think of that as a methodology, and it's embedded in this bigger idea of product stewardship, sort of taking responsibility for the whole life cycle, all the way upstream, raw materials, all the way downstream to product in use and product at end of life, and the idea of cradle to cradle, right? A kind of a Bill McDonough-ism, that you can. The gold standard is to bring material back and create it back into itself and reuse it. I would say not so many companies have figured out how to crack that code very effectively yet. I think most companies that talk about green products are still at the stage where they, kind of add in some recycled content, and that may have the effect of raising cost and may also diminish the performance of the product. And that therefore it's marketed as a, sort of a niche green product, which automatically means you have a smaller market. But if we're interested in driving global transformation, then product stewardship really has to be a mass market strategy. And the only way it can be a mass market strategy is if you figure out how to take this life cycle logic and create a lower cost position, as we said before,
Right.
or a differentiated product, or both. Not too many companies have figured out how to do that yet. I think about, if I look back over the last 10, 15 years, Xerox, I think, was one of the players in the 90s that figured out how to do that in the commercial copier business. In fact, it probably saved the company in some ways, as it was busily missing the digital revolution.
Right.
But it was leasing copiers, taking them back, designing, the copiers to be taken back. Most of the weight of the material of the copiers was being reused, remanufactured. So Xerox actually, developed this skill back in the 90s. In the carpet industry, I think some of the core players there, Interface, Collins and Aikman, Tandis, had figured out how to bring used carpet back and use that material to make new carpet and do it in a way that actually reduce cost, and increase functionality. I think today maybe a company like Walmart, if you look way downstream, they're almost the opposite of you guys. You're B2B, they're retail, but they're looking back upstream and shifting entire industries by the buyer power that they have.
Applying pressure on all of the...
Pressure and fundamentally shifting the way things happen in industries, whether it's organic cotton or in different products, different product categories. They're changing the way, these industries are structured and how the players in them behave. And I think in some ways you guys are in the same kind of position, given the strategy that's being taken to shift the very structure and focus of the entire global aluminum industry.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Stuart. This was very valuable.
My pleasure.